Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Joseph Capps coming back to you again with another episode of our podcast and our YouTube channel, Dancing with the Darkness. This is a raw, unfiltered account of living, surviving, and also thriving with CPTSD. So we don't just talk about the bad things. This is more a message of hope than anything else, a message of understanding. If you're a first-time listener, we thank you so much for joining us. I hope and pray that something in this video speaks to you today. If it does, please like, share, subscribe to the channel. It's simply a way for us to get more reach out in the community. There's a lot of people out there suffering, and that's the only reason that I'm here, is to turn my own pain into purpose and to try to help others that are out there that feel like they're living on an island, that they're all alone. Dancing with the darkness, like my channel says, and God forbid that darkness starts leading that dance. If you are a return visitor, thank you so much for your support. We absolutely can't do this without support. I can't. Your comments are very affirming. Everything that you choose to even if it's just a like on the video, that is really all I need to continue to sustain myself, is to know that somewhere out there I'm helping someone. That is the whole reason that we're here. So today we're gonna, when I say raw and unfiltered, we've said some raw things and some unfiltered things in the past, but I'm gonna go ahead and say today that there is absolutely a trigger warning. There's absolutely some things that I'm going to talk about today that could cause emotional flashbacks. And so if you're not prepared for that, or if it's something that you're going to be really sensitive to that could hurt you in any way or harm you in any way, this isn't going to be the video for you. But it's on my heart. I think that these things need to be talked about. They need to be said. I have always promised from day one on this podcast that I was going to come to my audience in a very genuine and personal way, that this isn't going to be textbook stuff. This isn't going to be, all clinical stuff. We've been beat to death with all of these things, all of these theories. I want this channel to be about the raw feelings and emotions and circumstances and the struggles that it takes to exist in this world with CPTSD. And in that genuineness, to also help you understand that we absolutely can overcome this. We absolutely can turn our pain into purpose in a way that we can help others. And I hope and pray that this audience sees me as an example of that, because that's the only reason that I'm here. My whole life in the past 20 years has been dedicated to getting to this point, to where I can make some real purpose out of my life by helping others. And so I'm going to be really raw and really personal today. And so I hope that you're ready for this. And, this isn't meant to cause people pain. It's meant to be real. It's meant to help you understand that it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to say these things, that we shouldn't fear that. We should be able to get these things out in the open. We should be able to face them directly, and realize that that's not our identity, and that if anybody judges us, that's their problem, because they don't understand, and that's fine. Okay? We are some of the strongest, most resilient, but also most caring and loving, reliable people of integrity on this earth. Okay? So no matter what you've suffered, it has made you into something amazing and beautiful, and you can absolutely be a tool for God and help others. So that's where we're going to start. We talk about this a lot. If we're going to talk about moral wounds, and we're going to talk about moral injury today, which really is the foundation of everything that we go through, well, we have to understand where morality and humanity comes from. Where does it come from? Oh, our parents teach us that? No, if you have CPTSD, then your parents did not teach you that. Okay, so we've just debunked that, haven't we? Our sense of morality comes from the fact that we were crafted by our Lord in heaven and we were crafted in his image, okay? And when man and woman were created, they were created before sin entered the world. There was no sin when they were created. Sin came later. Sin is the root of trauma. Sin is the reason why we hurt other people and they experience trauma. And so we need to understand that we were never designed to sin, and we were never designed to be able to handle the effects of that sin, which often is trauma. So number one, there's nothing wrong with you. You're not defective. We were not wired in our brain, and we were not created or crafted in a way to deal with all of the effects of cumulative trauma and the effects of sin and the effects of, most importantly, the moral wound. So what is the moral wound? Okay, well, all of us, unless you're like a couple people that I ran into in some austere places that had eyes like dolls, and I don't think there was a soul there. So, I don't think that they had a moral compass whatsoever. But we start life with that morality in us. We get to an age, we call it the age of accountability, the age where you yourself start understanding what right and wrong is. You start having a conscience that has nothing to do with mom and dad saying don't do that, because many of us, they told us don't touch the hot stove, and if we touched it and we burn ourselves, because that's what we do. That's what Adam and Eve did in the garden when God said don't eat from that tree, and they had everything that they could ever want, and what did they do? They had to eat from the one tree that was forbidden. That's what we do. And there's consequences to that. There's not only consequences for the doer of the sin, but also the product of the sin. And often, those of us with CPTSD are a product and a sum total of many sins that were committed against us that became trauma. And so when we talk about the moral wound, we need to understand that that is something that's inherent from birth. That is our temperament. We know clinically, if you completely and totally don't believe in a higher power, that's fine. But I can tell you that clinically we know that we have a footprint inside of us that makes us unique from anybody else. That is our temperament that we are born with. It is just like the unique fingerprint and the unique footprint that you have that no one else in the world has. And we can't change that. That's who we are. That is the soul, whether you believe it or not, that God put in us. And that is our true identity, is that soul that God put in us. Okay? There's many empirical studies when you look at studies of twins and everything else, environmental. There's no explanation. Okay? We just know that everybody is born different, and that's all there is to it. We share almost 98, 99% DNA, and we're still very, very different because of that unique soul. So this is the root of our existence. So you've probably heard about the roots of trauma, and they've come up with some really good ways of helping us understand trauma, and they call it the roots of trauma. And they have this tree, and all of the roots are down in the ground, and these roots are all of the bad things that have happened to us, and that is what determines how our tree grows, whether we're going to have healthy fruit or rotten fruit or healthy leaves or no leaves at all. And that's a great analogy for us to try to understand that, but I want to go deeper than that. We should understand the true nature of our moral wound. And so we have this conscious, we have this inherent part of us that knows right from wrong, and that gets violated. Sometimes it can be violated once, and it turns into acute stress or PTSD because that's one event. Unfortunately, more than not, the roots are very extensive and they're very deep. And the reason they're deep is because it's a generational trauma set or curse. There has been generations of abuse that continues. There is generations of dysfunction. We know that epigenesis, or genetic structure that is inherited from our parents and our relatives, is very, very real. And that when your parents have been jacked up and have lots of issues from abuse, or they have CPTSD or anxiety or depression, that absolutely contributes to the fetus that turns into this beautiful child that is born into the world, and they already have a temperament and they already have a genetic structure that's been modified a little bit differently than someone else. We know this to be true. So between temperament and epigenesis, we have 52% of us that we can't change, that we have to radically accept that that's who we are and that that's our identity. Now, this isn't a message of hopelessness. This is a message of hope, because you need to understand that the other 48%, which we have developed into because of the things that have happened to us, such as character and attachment strategies and all of these things that seem to make us who we are, we can absolutely rewire those and change those and become a better, healthier, more well-rounded and grounded person. But it takes work. And so we have to have a starting point. And I can tell you from personal experience, I'm not here to belittle any therapy or any of the other therapists that are out there. I'm just going to talk to you from a raw personal point of view. Yes, I am a therapist. Yes, I have studied for years and years and years, but my journey was more about trying to figure out what was wrong with me. It was more about trying to figure out why years of therapy at many different therapists and doctors, many different pharmacological options, nothing was doing anything to help me. It just continued to get worse and worse and worse. And it's because I was stuck in patterns. I was stuck in self-loathing and self-hatred. And most of all, shame and guilt, which we're going to talk a lot about today, because that is the very foundation of CPTSD, is shame and guilt. And it eats us alive. It is worse than cancer. And eventually it will kill you. It will kill you, one way or another. Whether someone gets to a point of hopelessness and they self-delete, or the inflammation that is caused by this chronic stress, this chronic state of hypervigilance with our sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems always unregulated, and our body becomes autoimmune and starts attacking itself, and we have inflammation, and we have proven. You don't believe me? Go look at the Mind Sight Institute and look at the emergency room doctors that started an organization studying trauma, because they were in emergency rooms and they were treating the wounds, but they knew that they weren't fixing the problem because the trauma is here and it's here. And so they've linked the top 5 killers to trauma. Okay? Diabetes, heart disease, stroke, high blood pressure, cancer. It's all linked. Our body is a machine. It is a fine-tuned machine. It is the most miraculous thing on earth, and it's because God crafted it. And no matter how hard we try to understand it, the more we will not understand it, because He made us. And so we need to understand that this is a tremendous enemy. I believe that this is the number one tool that the darkness uses to demoralize us, to make us hopeless, and also to make us hurt other people, right? We sometimes unconsciously, many of us are very empathic and many of us are highly sensitive, and we care very, very much about other people. But our attachment strategies are all screwed up, and we're stuck in this constant state of self-preservation, physically, mentally, and spiritually. And so we push people away, we hurt people, and really all we're trying to do is keep ourselves safe, because no one has ever protected us. No one has ever kept us safe from birth. And so our life's mission, unfortunately, has been to tuck the little helpless child away in a deep, dark recess of our being. And hell or high water, nobody's going to hurt that child again. And we will do whatever we have to do, just like a mother bear defending her cubs. We will do whatever it takes to protect that child. So this moral wound starts from birth, and it is shaped and it is formed. And when we talk about CPTSD, we're not going to talk about a moral wound singular. We're going to talk about moral wounds. And so I'm going to be very personal with you today. I'm going to talk about some moral wounds that I live with. When you find out later in life that your mother wanted you dead in her womb, when you find out that the only reason why there wasn't an abortion is because of your father's religion. It's not that he wanted you, it's that he was programmed that if we do this, it's a mortal sin and we're going to hell. So he was more concerned about himself, which, you know what, at 80 years old, he still is only concerned about himself. That's just the way that it is. So it's a moral wound later in life when you find out that your own parents didn't want you. Your mother wanted you dead in her womb, and she did absolutely everything she could. Okay, she's a nurse and she knows medicine, and she did everything she could do to not carry this term, to not carry this pregnancy. So is it a miracle or a curse? Is it a miracle or a curse? This little baby comes into the world. And guess what? We've learned extensively that trauma starts in the womb. Okay? For those people that believe that when they're doing an abortion, they're just killing a lump of cells, well, we constantly contradict that, because we now know that trauma starts in the womb. You are already feeling abandonment. You are already feeling a lack of nurture. You are already feeling isolated and alone before you even come out of your mother. So this is where that moral wound begins. You have a soul. God gives you an identity. And from birth, actually before birth in the womb, the trauma starts for you. And so you come into the world, and then there's physical abuse, and there's psychological abuse, and there's extensive sexual abuse. And these are all more moral wounds. And the sad part is that we dissociate. We do all of these trauma responses that we talked about in the last video to survive, because we are instinctual as well. We are animals, just like the animals that are out there in the world. We just have more intelligence, and we have the ability to think and to choose. That's that free will that God gave us. That's what makes us different. And so we survive. We fawn, we flop, we befriend, we do all of these trauma responses to navigate and weave the narrow road of our lives so that we can survive. It's survival instinct. Then we finally become an adult and we're free and we get out of that abusive environment. No, I wish that was so. We continue our patterns. We've never learned to love ourselves. We've never even learned to like ourselves. We're carrying a tremendous amount of shame and guilt, because somewhere inside of us deeply we feel that we are part of the blame. We are part of what happened. You know, my parents didn't want me and I came into the world, and then, you know, the very first thing I remember them telling me cognitively is that, oh, well, we had you to save our marriage. And obviously, you know, immediately I'm a failure because they brought me into the world, or conceived me in an effort to save their marriage. Their marriage ended before I was ever born, obviously, and that little baby that was supposed to save everything was literally being tried to be killed. And so we need to understand that this is a deep moral wound, and we're going to carry this until we deal with it. Every time a female or a male did things to me, sexually or physically or emotionally, that's a moral wound. Because somewhere inside of me, I know that this is wrong. I know that it's wrong because I would never do it to anyone else. And so we come into adulthood carrying some deep moral wounds. We come into adulthood not understanding, you know, what is my sexuality? I've had things done to me by male and female. I don't know what sexuality is. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. The only thing that I know is that if I fawn or submit to these acts, this person may give me a little bit of nurturing. They may give me a little bit of affection afterwards. And so we start to allow these things. Even when we get to a point where we have the physicality to stop it, we continue to do these things in relationships and everything else, because we're so desperate. We're so desperate for that affection. We're so desperate for that mysterious hormone oxytocin that we've never had. It becomes our sustenance. We are desperately trying to have nurturing. We're desperately trying to have love from someone, even if it causes us pain. And for us, this is normal because as children, our source of pleasure was also our source of pain. So you never knew what was going to happen. Am I going to get a hug today? Am I going to get smacked today? Are they going to do something to me horrific sexually today? I don't know. And so we grow up with that confusion within. And then many of us, my other organization, Project Paladin, we have a channel. We had a channel that was very active, and we're still active with first responders and military. We find specifically that the 2.7% of the world that is in these fields, that many times they are driven to be in these fields because of trauma, because of bad things that happened. And so we become rescuers, we become protectors, we are so hypersensitive to stopping this for other people. The problem is we're still hating ourselves, we're still loathing ourselves, we're still thinking that we don't deserve love, we don't deserve compassion, we don't deserve any of the things that we're trying to make sure other people get. We have this ability to be fearless when it comes to defending others and protecting others, but yet we cower and submit like a wounded animal in a corner when it's happening to us. We can't protect ourselves because we don't think we're worthy. These are those roots of those moral wounds and why they're affecting you today. This is the foundation. We've talked about many elements, okay? We've talked about your attachment strategies, your emotional flashbacks, why you do the things you do, okay? One of the imperative things that starts off with my complex trauma profiling system that I've learned from myself is that we've got to know who we are. So we need to know what our temperament is, and we need to go forward from there. If we're going to find any kind of way to heal, we need to understand who we are and how we got to where we are. And in my eyes, that's when life begins. It's a painful journey, it's an arduous journey, but it can be done. And so we're sitting here as adults, and we've had horrific things done to us, and we have moral wounds. Many of us have gone into the service professions, and we continue to see those injustices vicariously with other people. And those also become moral wounds because we continue to know that this is wrong. This is an injustice. Someone should not be able to do that to a child. That's not okay. People should not be able to hurt each other the way that they do. It's not right. It's a moral wound. It's wrong. It's an injustice. And we learn that our cup of vengeance will never get filled. If you're in the military, you know that it's like killing an anthill. We're never going to purge this evil completely from the earth. They're going to continue to come and to come and to come. And that is part of the moral wound also. Because we carry this burden like we failed. And it's not us who failed. We have been failed. We have been failed from the beginning of our existence. Failed by our parents, failed by our caregivers, failed by the system that didn't protect us, failed by the therapeutic community that may have done their best but didn't help us, failed by the Veterans Administration, whatever. We've been failed. I don't care how strong you are. I work out every day. I've done powerlifting. I've done all of these things. I still can't carry all this crap, okay? I don't care how big my shoulders have gotten. I don't care how strong, how big my bench press is, all of this crap. I cannot carry it. I've been trying to carry it. I've been trying. But we all get to that point where we start to get some white hair on our face and some gray hair on our head, and the physical body that's been persevering and embracing the suck and all of those things that we're taught, it starts to break down because we age, and that's just the way that it happens. Our physical body starts to not be able to handle these things anymore, and that's reciprocal with the mental strain, and our mind can't handle these things anymore. Once again, you're not defective. You're human. You're human. There's only so much that we can carry. And then it's a moral wound when you feel like you're healing and people come along in your life and they're watering your roots, right? They're watering your roots with healthy things, and you think, wow, I'm going to start to grow. And you get a little branch and you get a little piece of fruit, and then unfortunately they tear that fruit away, or they allow that branch to die. And this becomes even more painful because you've been vulnerable. You've shown yourself. You may have even shown the deepest, most precious part of yourself, and you've been betrayed or harmed or hurt. This is a deep moral wound, and these things can be crushing. I'm not going to sit here and patronize you or this audience and tell you that I don't have the same thoughts. It's very real. It's very real. That's why I call it dancing with the darkness. I don't want to call it wrestling with the darkness or any of those things, because I think it is a dance, and I think that we can lead the dance. I believe that the identity that God put in us can be stronger, and it can lead the dance. That does not mean that that other part of ourself, that alter ego, goes away. It's never going to go away, and we have to dance with it. Many of us have to come to terms with something else that can become a moral wound. We need to understand that there is that part of us that is loving and caring and wonderful, but there is that alter ego that is capable of doing things because we've been put in positions in battle, in life, where that dark side has had to come out and deal with things. And so that becomes a sense of a moral wound as well, because we start to carry a lot of guilt about things we may have had to do. And that is false guilt. We have to let go of that. If you were trained as a military person and you went into battle and you did what you were supposed to do the way that your training told you to do it, and you saved the lives of your men, and you purged some of this evil from the world that continues to grow and spawn, there is no guilt and there is no shame for that. We need to remember that God is a warrior God. He loves us, and he's sensitive and he's caring. But if you pick your Bible up and read it, you're going to learn that God was a warrior God, and God had no problem killing or getting rid of evil in the world. There's a difference between murder and killing. So this is a source of false guilt. Feeling guilty every time you have an intimate experience with someone, even if it's your partner of 20 or 30 years, because of what happened to you and to your sexuality being torn away from your body and torn away from you. This is false guilt and shame. God created that. He created lovemaking to be a gift between a couple. And it's not your fault that it was distorted and torn away from you and destroyed. It is meant to be a beautiful act. It is meant to be something that produces intimacy between you and your partner. Closeness, unity. When God's talking about becoming one flesh with that person, that's what he's talking about. That's false guilt and shame. That's a moral wound. Feeling guilty because maybe you submitted to someone in authority, or you submitted to your caregiver, and you feel like you allowed them to do demoralizing and horrific things to you. That's false shame and guilt. Okay? No matter what you think, you did not have the capacity to stop it. And not only that, the moral wound of no one around you stopping it. This isn't yours to carry. You've got to let it go. We as a group have to let it go so that we can learn to thrive. There's things that we can't carry anymore. It's a moral wound when you've maybe been in a marriage for 20, 30, 40 years and it comes to a point where it's going to end. Where you find out that maybe you didn't really know your partner or your partner didn't really know you. And you figure out in your healing that it's literally been a continuation of abuse. That your whole relationship has been based on gaslighting and control and triangulation and everything else. Once again, we're having shame and guilt over that, like we failed. This isn't yours to carry. You know from watching this channel that I adapt to some pretty stringent protocols for myself. Extreme ownership is one of them. It's a term that was coined by Jocko Willenick, a Navy SEAL. And it's, I make decisions, I do things, there's consequences, and those are my consequences. I am all about accountability for myself. So you can be accountable to yourself. You can have extreme ownership. You can be responsible. You can be a person of integrity. And you still don't have to carry shame and guilt. We need to understand that there's a thing called conviction. And conviction is what comes from God, and that is our moral compass. Okay, so if we do something, if we commit a sin, normally something tells us, hey, that was wrong. And God has already given us a way out of that by sending his only begotten son to die on the cross so that we can be forgiven. And so why did he do that? Not only did he do that because he loves us, but he did it because he doesn't want us to live on this earth with shame and guilt our entire lives. How can we produce for him? How can we be what he wants us to be? How can we help others? How can we love others if we hate ourselves that much? And I'm telling you this from the heart because I've spent my entire life hating myself, carrying not only my own shame and guilt, but everybody else's. I can't do it anymore. I'm facing you today in this video and I'm telling you I can't do it anymore. And I don't want you to do it anymore. Take extreme ownership for you and your decisions. Hold yourself accountable for your actions. And that's it. That's all God expects us to do. And he sent his son so that when we do screw up, we can be forgiven. We can be redeemed. We can be restored. That's what this is about. It's not about persecution. It's not about sending us to hell. It's not about us having a horrible, tortuous existence on this earth. It's about being redeemed. It's about being loved by a God unconditionally. And we can't understand that as human beings, especially human beings that have been through horrific things. Because we can barely even understand the concept of love and what it is. That is the example. That is the example. The example of what love is sacrifice. It is forgiveness. It is restoration. It is redemption. It's not shame and guilt. So if you're carrying shame and guilt today, and it's defined your life, which it has for many of us, you've got to self-examine and you've got to start looking at some of these things and realize that many of the things that you are carrying are not yours. That's not you making excuses for someone else or for yourself. It's you taking extreme ownership of yourself and realizing that I can't carry the sins of my father. I can't carry the sins of my mother. I can't carry the sins of the world. That was Jesus's job, to carry the sins of the world. And it was so great that his father had to look away from him when that sin came upon him because he can't look upon it. We need to remember that our Lord that created us, he understands everything. He understands what we're going through. He understands the temptations. He understands our mistakes. He understands when we screw up. And all he wants from us is to say, God, I'm sorry. I can feel that this is wrong because you put that morality in me. I want to be a better person, and I realize that your son came to this earth so that I can be forgiven for this, so that I can be better, and so that I can be restored. We have work to do. If you're watching this video and you're suffering with CPTSD and this stuff is resonating with you, you need to understand that your purpose on this earth is beyond your scope of reality. There are so many of us out here that have been suffering and hurting. And we can turn this into an amazing story by learning to accept God's forgiveness, and then learning how to forgive ourselves, and then learning to forgive others, and moving forward and sharing your story with other people that think that they're all alone and that no one will ever understand the pain, that no one will understand the shame and the guilt that they're carrying. My hope and my prayer for each one of you today, as well as myself, is that we lay some of this today, we lay it down today. Once we address these moral wounds and we start to accept the things that we cannot change, and we start to accept the fact that things were done to us that we had no control over and we had no way of stopping, we'll realize that what we truly have control of is right now, today. We have control of today, and we need to embrace each day that way. Begin anew each day and do our very best, and that is good enough. I hope and pray that this video spoke to you today. It is straight from my heart. I hope that you feel that. I hope that you can feel the raw emotion and the truth and the genuineness today. Please comment, like, share, subscribe to the channel if you were reached. I thank you so much for being on here today and listening. And until we meet next time, God bless you and all of yours.